listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week on the Beardcast, we're concluding our little conversation that we've had about the book of James for the last few weeks. And so we're on James chapter 5. And so, Zach, as you've read through James chapter 5, what are some things that spoke to you or came out towards you as you were going through this before we got on?
Well, James is kind of wrapping it up here. And, he goes from chapter 4 into chapter 5 talking about the proud and the wealthy and has this little bit of a warning for folks that are wealthy. And it's not so much money that's the problem. It's how they're treating people, and that they've lost that sense of compassion and empathy, and traded it for riches. And James's warning here is your riches have rotted. Moths are going to destroy your clothes. These things don't matter. It's people that matter. Making sure that those of you who have money and have people that work for you, making sure that you're taking care of them in a way that, is glorifying to God. And so James sounds really, really harsh in these moments. But we have to know that he's addressing this issue of, I don't know what the right thing is there, but there's definitely this wage gap and this issue there, and he's seeing it and he's addressing it, which is really relevant to us today because we see that as well. How do we take care of people that, if we're business owners or even our waiters and waitresses, are we being fair, or are we tithing? Are we giving of our time and resources in a way that's glorifying to God? And I think that's James's warning here is remember that when you have stuff, to respond accordingly.
Well, and I also felt that his kind of as he's bringing it to a close, we look in verse 9, don't complain about each other, brothers and sisters, so that you won't be judged. Look, the judge is standing at the door.
Right.
I've noticed in my walk of faith and realized, and I've said this over and over again, that I didn't grow up in the life of the church. And one of the things I've noticed as I've continued to mature and grow, and Christians are so judgmental. Even the ones that say they're all loving, if it's someone that goes against their little ethic, then And I admit I do it, and we all do. I feel sorry for those Rockies fans. I'm not judging their inability to get out of opportunities to get into a 6-4-3 double play several times last night.
All the time, constant.
But that's the thing that I think we have to really work on. And I think that if you ask me what can Christians do to better themselves in the world today, I think we work on that judging part. And if we can be really loving and affirming and caring for all people, I think we'll be all right. The problem is when we start entering into that judging thing, they don't wear the right shoes. And it goes back to, that ties back into the money thing, that how you handle your money, your heart is where your money is, or money is where your heart is, however you want to look at that.
Right.
But I think that what we have to be careful of is really, how are we treating other people? And
right.
The overarching kind of thing with James is that's what it's really about. How are you treating other people in the name of Jesus?
Right.
And that realize that it's not all about you.
Right. And you have them kind of finish up there at the back end of verse, I think 11. For the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. We forget compassion and mercy too often when dealing with ourselves, when dealing with other people. We jump to judging and we forget compassion and mercy.
Would you say that's because we're such an instantaneous society that we instantaneously move from one thing to the next, that instead of actually addressing the issue, the next thing pops up and we get attracted to lights to that versus trying to take care of one injustice at a time? Or would you say that we are lost in a sense of we really have no clue what compassion and mercy really look like?
Man, it may be a both and, that we take in so much information and so much news and have so much of it so readily available through the internet now that technology has changed the way that we consume news and tragedy and even celebrations and the rare chance that we get to celebrate with people. That it's just that flash. Every 30 seconds there's something new. There's another 140 characters of news that draws us to it. So it's almost like moths to a light, that when the next light comes on, we're drawn to it and we forget about the other. But even with all of that, maybe it's just cynicism that creeps in, and cynicism replaces compassion and mercy, because we just can't. We're taking in so much of what the world has to offer, good and bad, that cynicism replaces that compassion and mercy, and we go to judgment, and so we spread ourselves thin on trying to be compassionate, and in return we aren't effective.
Well, and then you could also say that the whole idea of confessing, that how often have we gone to God and been honest and earnest about God where we've fallen short, because we don't want to do that, because heaven forbid if we admit our mistakes, admit that we're not perfect, and because that's, in some ways, people view that as a sign of weakness, and that only makes you stronger when you recognize where you've gone wrong. And you think about it like, let's look at it from a baseball perspective. If you're not hitting very well, what are you going to do to make it right? You're going to say, hey, this isn't working anymore. I got to change the way I'm doing this. And you're going to reorient yourself, or reorient your hitting, or whatever it is you're struggling with.
Right.
And I think that's the same thing with faith, is that we have to confess to orient ourselves towards God, and to make sure that we're on the right path and not going astray. And that's where James, I think, comes into full circle, is that one, we got to be honest and earnest with ourselves. We can't judge, and then bringing it to a close. If someone goes astray, bring them back. And that sense of accountability that I think that we have to move towards in the church, to hold people accountable for their lack of faith, or their lack of effort, or their lack of trying to do their faith as best they can. We need to bring them back in, and that's what we need.
Right. Well, and it's bringing them back in, not with judgment, but with compassion and mercy, meeting people where they are, not where we think they need to be, and forcing them into that, that square peg into a round hole, but meeting them with compassion and mercy, so that they begin to meet, allow God to meet them where they are, and not dragging them in by their toes, because we think they need to be back.
Well, isn't that what Rudy talked about in his World Methodist Conference thing? That love is not meeting him at your level; it's meeting him at their level and helping them grow.
That's right.
And that's what Jesus does for us. I mean, we can look at the Bible and see how God has done that for humankind throughout all human history. God has met us where we're at and helped us grow. And I think that that's what we really should focus on, is how are you growing? How are we, moving towards perfection? Let's be very Wesleyan here. How are we moving towards perfection?
Right.
What's holding you back?
And I think that's what we look at in this whole series on James, is how do we do that? What's holding us back? Are we allowing judgment and cynicism to creep in where compassion and mercy used to live? How do we acknowledge that? How do we move forward and confess and move closer to God? And in return, moving closer to people and meeting them where they are. And so as we bring this to a close, I guess that's our question. Where are you at in all of this in James? Where do you need to let go of some judgment? Where do you need to replace that with some mercy and compassion? What do you need to confess? What do you need to work on? Where are you at? Let God meet you in those places. And I promise, from my own experience, you'll see something new and different, and it will be hard and it will hurt. But that means we're listening. That means we're hearing God's voice in these confessions and in these moments. So where are you at? What are you doing? Where are you confessing? We love having the conversation with all of you, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, on the website, wherever you communicate with us. Thank you for having the conversation. Share with us. Where are you at? Where is God meeting you at? How are you striving for and towards perfection? We have a great great grouping of blogs contributors. A lot of people writing for us and sharing their heart through their words and their experience. Love for you to check that out at beardedtheologians.com. You can find all of our old podcasts and series there. We'd love for you to buy a shirt, coffee mug, or anything. Christmas is coming around the corner. Your contributions that helps us continue to do this. This is a free podcast, and that helps us. So you can check us out at beardedtheologians.com.
Or if you have a pastor, this is Pastor Appreciation Month. If your pastor has a beard or is just a great person that loves theology and loves humor, we've got some great stuff that would be great for them to receive as pastor appreciation gifts.
That's right. And outside of the podcast, make sure you appreciate your pastor. Tell him thank you. Tell him you love him. Whether it's a past pastor or your current pastor, let them know that they're loved. So we'll bring that to a close for the Bearded Theologians. I'm Zach Bechtold.
And I'm Matt Franks.
Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media, and we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.
My controls are inverted. There it is.